What if home tours never had to end? Today, I'm joined by RJ Pittman, CEO of Matterport, to explore how AI and digital twins are transforming real estate, creating smarter, always-on experiences that are changing the way we showcase, market, and sell homes. Tune in. Are you a real estate agent eager to unlock the power of AI to boost your productivity and scale your business? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Real Estate AI Flash, the weekly podcast that takes AI from a buzzword to a business tool, making it approachable and actionable for agents like you. I'm your host, Rajiv Sajja, and each week I interview agents from across the country who are using AI to transform their careers. Join us on this journey to become an AI skilled agent and take your real estate career to the next level. Now let's get to this episode. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate AI Flash. And today, normally we have agents across the country sharing how their best practices with AI, but today we have an industry thought leader. We have RJ Pittman, who's the chairman and CEO of Matterport, a little known company that you all are very familiar with, a CoStar Group brand and a global leader in the digitization of the built world. Over the past 25 years, RJ has held senior leadership positions at eBay, Apple, and Google. And prior to joining Matterport, he was a chief product officer at eBay. He led the global brand for one of the most recognized companies in the world as a driving force behind the look, feel, and functionality of the eBay marketplace. Welcome to Real Estate Flash, RJ.
Thanks, Rajiv. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And when we were talking, you guys have been dealing with AI for a long time. I'm sure we're going to get into it. But for the listening audience to get to know your journey, I gave your 25 years of experience like a Cliff Notes version of your experience. So if you could walk us through your journey and what brought you to where you are today.
Sure. And by the way, thanks for the intro. That's great. I had to convert that into a bio or something. I've got to update, my bio with something a little more eloquent. Maybe I'll use AI to do it. I don't know.
There it is.
But, so my career is kind of split in two in some ways, and it's also kind of a full circle. The first half of my career, I was a passionate, crazy entrepreneur. So I got my start really when I was 15 years old. I had started my first business when I was in junior high, going into high school. And it's a very long story, but the short of it was, I was blown away by this breakthrough user-friendly computer called the Macintosh. Came out in 1984. I had 3 failed attempts at my business plan with my parents in attempt to create justification for why they should buy a computer that cost more than a car in those days. And I think ultimately I just wore them down. And with this computer, I went on a crazy adventure to transform photocopy shops back in the day into this thing called desktop publishing, where you could point and click and print out graphics and flyers and business cards and things like that in a way that they'd never seen before. It was a total flyer, but it turned out to be a great business for a young kid making his way through junior high and high school. And that's when I got the entrepreneurial bug, right? So if you fast forward 15 years, I went through a handful of startups that I really enjoyed diving deep into right at the crest in the beginning of the internet. I was coming out of grad school, and this thing called the World Wide Web had broken through the web browser. I was just in the most interesting time, I'd say, of, digital transformation at its earliest days.
Yeah.
And what I thought we could do is use that to, bring to life a whole bunch of industries and businesses into the digital era. So I focused on things like financial services, stock market information that was never available anywhere else but in the newspaper the day after, the stocks traded. You'd get your stock information a day late. And then things like moving retail to e-commerce. And so I had startups rooted squarely in those spaces for many years, built some of the first payment processing capabilities on the internet, the first stock trading platforms on the internet way back, right? Mid-90s. And I just believed and found this theme through my entrepreneurial trajectory that we could use this technology in ways to demystify, simplify, make these kinds of things accessible to the rest of the world, right? Not just to your rich uncle that had a stockbroker on the other end of a phone, right? Could we democratize, complex things? Followed that theme entirely through my career. And one of the last startup companies I did was an advanced visual search engine technology, really exciting company. And that's ultimately what brought me into the big world. We were essentially acqui-hired into Google, and Google's a big partner and customer of mine at that time. And I found myself in a great big startup. At that time, Google had 9,000 employees, which was quite a bit more than any company I'd ever created. But at the same time, you think of them now, they've got almost 200,000 employees, right? And so this was very early formative times of doing similar things. How could we make information more accessible to everybody, right? Similar democratization using technology, but at big scale.
Yeah.
And so from Google to Apple to eBay, same theme all the way through with, I think, a great privilege to be able to work, in some of those extraordinary companies during, very transformative times. And all along, I knew that my side passion, my love outside of technology, also since that age of about 15, my mom loved getting her hands on old houses and doing restoration projects on them. And she put me to work. And, if I wanted a bathroom in our restoration house for my senior year of high school, she said, that's what you're going to do this summer, son. You got to go build it. And I think just putting my hands into the physical world, into the built world was a great thing. She really, I think, knew how to keep me grounded, literally. And that became a passion of mine for, 20, 30 years, alongside doing real estate design and development, and something I care very deeply about. And I knew one day I was going to bring the two of those together. And I saw a great window of opportunity to turn my attention to prop tech about 6-7 years ago. And Matterport was just one of these special companies out there that I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But I knew that if we could unlock all of that data that's, attached and sitting inside a Matterport 3D tour, Matterport digital twin, there could be a much more interesting story here, for this company. And so I jumped in with both feet, never looked back. That was, 6.5 years ago.
Yeah. And so your mom has a lot to do with you becoming a Matterport chairman CEO, at least the vision of the product.
100%. She, like I like to say, my dad gave me the business chops and that sort of entrepreneurial piece. My mom for sure in prop tech. I think they own like a 25, maybe 30% stake in me and in the equity in RJ Pittman Inc. And very grateful for that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's a fun story and journey as well for where you are now. So obviously you're now part of the CoStar Group.
Yes.
So before we dive into specific applications that you see AI in real estate, what was obviously AI has been around for a long time with data and things that you've been doing even pre-Gen AI. But it's just sort of hit a real mainstream of awareness and what's possible when people could like you talked about democratization of information. I feel like now we're in the democratization of intelligence with Gen AI, right? Like we're getting there a little bit. So I'd love to see what your reaction or first light bulb moment was when ChatGPT or any Gen AI stuff was introduced to you. What was your first pick?
Well, I'm going to take you back in time a little bit to sort of my first version of this. It was actually at a science museum.
Oh, wow.
And this is an exhibit that's been preserved and been around and popped up in museums around the country, even still today. In fact, it's down at the Exploratorium, a great science museum here in San Francisco. That's this huge museum. It's a hands-on, science museum about the size of a football field. And it's this exhibit called ELIZA. And ELIZA, if you get a chance to look it up or go see it at a museum or even, here at the Exploratorium, it's wild. It was built and designed in the 60s.
Oof.
And it was literally the first software algorithm that was trying to pass the Turing test, which is, a computer concept and test that, tries to measure a threshold of reasoning. And can it actually, process what you are typing in and give you some sort of intelligible response back, right? And can it hold a conversation, in some fashion with some form of memory, or context? And it's pretty crude to be sure, no filters on it whatsoever, if you will.
Yeah.
And this was running on, one of these old Radio Shack computers,
Oof.
from like, the earliest days. And so as computers got to be, more capable, the product got a little more responsive. They worked on it, iterated a bit, and so it's literally, I would say, probably the first generation of something like a ChatGPT experience that paved the way for where we are today. No question about it.
100%, 100%. Yeah. I remember seeing something, a short video from Steve Jobs, like in 85. He almost sort of teased that this is sort of some trendy stuff that's going to come, evolution of where we are with tech, Gen AI stuff. Yeah.
There's no doubt, right? And look, AI itself, really started to pick up steam in the 80s. And specifically in research groups and universities and MIT and Stanford and such, extensive developments and advancements that were happening there. You could see it on the horizon for sure. But there were limitations, right? And some of the biggest limitations were around compute power. And really trying to find that exponential breakthrough that would give this, technology a chance at, hitting that next inflection point. And I don't think anybody saw it coming, right?
Yeah. And, you could argue that even OpenAI did not see it coming when they released ChatGPT to the world on Thanksgiving weekend. Who would release a product on Thanksgiving weekend? And they hit 100 million users, like the fastest in history. So I guess
I'll let you in on a little story there too. When I was at eBay, we were actually looking at making an investment in OpenAI. So we had all the OpenAI guys come over a couple of times and meet with us at our office here in San Francisco. Sam Altman was there, et cetera. And at that time, again, this was probably 2016. I guess we're talking now. And OpenAI has been around for a while. And what they were working on then was an AI that could basically play and master any game, right? So multiplayer games, the RPGs, chess, and things like that. And they had seen, Google and DeepMind out there beating the grandmasters in chess with their, DeepMind algorithm. And, could they go further and do something more complex, more interactive, that really had kind of, again, more human-like control to it? And I remember seeing that going, that's a pretty great way to, start testing and building an engine. But boy, did it seem like they were on like a long yeoman's journey at that. Nobody at that time, even them, had any concept that there would be this universal, brain, if you will, that could take the world by storm. Certainly, even Google, with all of the investments they had in their side of the house, nobody was ready for what has just happened.
That's a great segue, So let's dig into a little bit about Matterport. I love one of your things in your bio that I got was digitization of the built world, right?
Yes.
So layer into how is Matterport leveraging traditional AI or Gen AI, AI in general, to help consumers and agents in our industry?
Yeah. First and foremost, Matterport as a product and a company wouldn't exist without AI. So when we talk about it, it's not new to us. It's not buzzword compliant marketing speak. But we built an engine called Cortex, going back to the early days of the company. This is like era 2011, 2012. And what was Cortex's role then and what is it today? It's quite an exciting evolution. But to do what we do, essentially, let's take a half step back. We create a dimensionally accurate, photorealistic 3D tour. We call it a digital twin of any property, any size, any shape, homes, apartments, office space, factories, hotels. Like, we kind of do it all. But the company has cut its teeth in residential real estate. That's our biggest market. It's been a game changer for property marketing because it is the open house that never closes. It's open 24/7. You can put 1 million people in it and they're not going to wreck the floors or the carpeting and that sort of thing.
That's a good one.
And people can come to it from anywhere, right? If you don't live in the zip code where this house is, for sale, or maybe not even the city or state, and in many cases the country, what a great way to create that accessibility. And so, this is sort of the core of Matterport's existence. But if I talk, in the context of AI, well, how do you create that digital twin, right? And so we had to invent a special camera that had depth sensors in it that can see dimensional depth, but also had camera sensors on it that could get that photorealism so that it didn't look like something out of a video game from the 80s, right? And that was the big breakthrough. But then the AI piece went to work assembling all of the subcomponents of imagery and depth and geometry that we were capturing in a house, in a room, in the kitchen, in the bedroom. And then how do you stitch it all together?
That makes sense.
And ensure that it's accurate, that the stories of the house are stacking up correctly, the hallways lining things up, across the way are exactly as it exists. And so in the beginning, it was, we're going to measure it by hand. We're going to do all of this way, create these reference models. And then we're going to go use the Matterport and the camera and the software to reconstruct the 3D. And it's going to learn and iterate with a deep learning neural network that would learn and learn and learn and get improve until it could automatically recreate the 3D model with the same or better accuracy as the reference, models that we created by hand. And that Cortex engine today has done some pretty big breakthroughs because, we've gone out and now we've digitized over 50 billion square feet of space, Rajiv, in 190 countries around the world.
Unbelievable.
So this is a big, big library of spatial data, of property data. And when you have that kind of data in the world of AIs, I'm sure, various folks that you've had on your pod have probably alluded to, data rules the roost, right? You can ask OpenAI, Google, anybody, like the companies who have the data are the ones that are genuinely in position to do something interesting, useful with real value, right? And maybe some breakthroughs. And so you can connect the dots. You got 50 billion square feet of data. Gee, what could you do with it in the world of data hungry AI and Gen AI? Well, the first thing we did 4 years ago was made a version of Matterport that can create those same photorealistic, dimensionally accurate, beautiful 3D models from the smartphone in your pocket. Like, take this phone out and just, kind of go around your room and collect these panoramic images. We send it up to the cloud. There's no depth data. There's no 3D going on in the phone. But we extrapolate that. We predict the 3D geometry training it on all the data of all the 3D spaces we've built in the past with our pro cameras. We do that same iterate, perfect until it learns well enough to get you a great outcome, that anybody can do, right? So that really changed the game for us some years ago and broke the barriers down where you didn't need a professional camera from Matterport. You didn't need to be a professional photographer at all. And we went from 13,000 subscribers on our platform, the day we launched the iPhone solution, to now I think we're at 1.3 million subscribers on the platform.
I felt like that was your ChatGPT moment, right? Like
it really was a breakout. And Rajiv, what happened, in our business, people thought, well, wait a minute, RJ, what are you doing? We get all this revenue from our big Pro 2 camera. Now we have our Pro 3 super camera that does indoor, outdoor, does stadiums and, things like this. It's crazy. But why would you need any of that if you've got it on the smartphone? And the first space that any real estate agent or property owner, homeowners even, can go scan their own space, it's free. And so you can imagine me talking to the board and the investors and saying, so here, we're going to do this thing where I basically could cannibalize our entire existence.
Yeah.
But if we don't do it, somebody else will, right? The best way to face disruption is to disrupt yourself before someone else gets to it first, right? Mm-hmm. And even the company, right? And the team is like, who let this guy in the door? What's going to happen here? And what ended up happening is it's a bet that we made. I borrowed the playbook from Apple. It's called, broad product segmentation, right? The same thing when an iPhone comes out, and then 3 years later, a really cheap version of an iPhone comes out. And you wonder, well, wait a minute, if there's an iPhone for a third of the price of the flagship, you're never going to sell the flagship. And it works the other way.
Yeah.
You get the entry level product in and you move people up the ladder, right? Yeah. And you get them in your ecosystem. And what turned out is instead of vaporizing our existing business,
It
We ended up
amplified it.
selling more hardware, more cameras, more Pro 2s, more Pro 3s in the history of the company. That's still true today.
Yeah. And it amplified your business more than
It just,
WaveRider.
it really did, right? And it's globally accessible, as I mentioned. We're in all different languages and, in all different countries. And now we're seeing scans pop up of Egyptian tombs. We've had somebody do the pyramids, all sorts of historic landmarks, even parts of the Great Wall of China. Like it's amazing what you can do now when you put a capability like this out in the wild. You can literally capture anything.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a few brands that sort of it becomes like a verb for me. Like let's Uber there.
Yeah,
And you are like sort of like that from a 3D to like, do you have a Matterport for this? Like it
that's right.
becomes part of the thing because you sort of were so early on. You recognize the need, and you guys obviously are excelling at it. As part of as we shift a little bit and get to the wind up questions I want to ask you, I would love to learn. You're obviously now part of the CoStar Group, which is Homes.com. I mean, all the big assets they have. Talk to us a little bit about the synergies you see there for consumers and agents to maybe the next level of amplification for Matterport, because you're now part of the CoStar Group.
Yeah. I think of it this way, right? The real estate industry, like all of these industries I've talked about, like retail, e-commerce, financial services, fintech. I mean, look where we are now, right? We've gone from the classified ads or the newspaper of reading a printed stock price to now we can control our entire retirement portfolios ourselves. Log into E-Trade, it's all right there. Well, what about real estate? Why are we not transacting and trading real estate online like on eBay? And by the way, you can buy some land on eBay today. You can buy a little bit of like modular homes and things, but it's not really, what it should be. It's one of the last great frontiers that has not been, consumed by digitization, a digital transformation the way it should be. I'm very restless about this because one, it's the largest asset class in the world, right? This is a $327 trillion asset class. It's bigger than all those other ones combined. And we're still sitting here doing things in a fairly antiquated way.
Yeah.
To me, like that just doesn't resonate. And so we've gone from, at least we've emerged from the open houses that you find in the Sunday paper, classifieds, right? To we have an internet listing. Now we have photos, we got some videos. But what's the new standard, right? We would never say, would you put a listing up without photos anymore? Of course not. The new standard has to be the 3D twin, right? The 3D, tour, because it has all of the information that a home buyer needs, way more than photos do. And if we make it easy enough, like we're on the path here with like the iPhone, anybody can do this. You don't need the photographer to come in and do it. The seller can do it themselves, and it's free. Well, then you're giving people that accessibility. You are giving them so much more information and capability to make a buying decision. Look, there's a stat, and I'm not here to sell it, but this is what technology does, right?
Yeah.
Amazon comes in and disrupts and makes everything easy, 48 hours away. So yes, people switch from going to stores to buy things, they do it online. But what actually happened is everybody bought like 40% more stuff than they ever have before because it's easier, it's convenient, and you can just, get into a shopping mode at midnight after a glass of wine, and who knows what you've just purchased and put in your cart, right? The same thing can happen in real estate, and it does. When you enable it with technology like a Matterport, over the last 10 years, we measure it. Homes sell faster and for a higher price. On the whole, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
If you have the ability to put that open house online and give them like this sort of automated, home tour that you as an agent, will otherwise be asleep at 12, 1 in the morning, East Coast times, and you got a listing, and so you got people from California coming in online, at homes.com or what have you, taking a look. This is powerful, things that are moving transactions forward literally while you sleep. And
100%.
And we've proven this to a point where, Matterport gets over 1 billion visits to a digital twin, a 3D Matterport every year. 1 billion. This is like the YouTube of real estate.
100%.
And it's all over the world. And if we embrace this kind of technology, well, what's the synergy with, the CoStar Group? Well, they've got all the marketplaces, apartments, homes, LoopNet for commercial real estate, STR, which is for the travel and hospitality industry, Biz Buy Sell, which is the businesses in the real estate, and go on and on. 10X, the auction platform for the auction model of purchasing, a little bit of that eBay, type of thing for real estate. These are all the future. And CoStar has been a customer of Matterport since the beginning, right? So this wasn't some new idea we hatched between us. This is an 11-year relationship that has come to fruition where we said, look, if we join forces, we only want to do one thing. We want to accelerate at scale, moving the real estate industry forward. Can we bring it, into this digital age like these other industries and help the real estate community, the agents, the brokers, the buyers and sellers, become super agents, right?
Yeah.
And supercharge this category, even in down markets where, the technology can really be the thing that pulls us through. Just like Matterport's pulled the industry through when we were in COVID and agents couldn't host an in-person open house. Matterport was there on the scene to give you the virtual open house to keep that industry moving forward. That was a small contribution to the category. Sure. We want to make an outsized contribution in the years ahead. And you need a partner with, CoStar's wherewithal, but also their courage and grit to go change the game too.
100%. And look, it looks like it was a marriage that was meant to be with your vision, CoStar's vision, et cetera. And it reminds me of, that's great advice too for agents that are thinking about the digital twin, et cetera. Reminds me of a quote that I heard that, average agents sell features, good agents sell outcomes, and great agents sell feelings, right? Because home is such an emotional purchase.
Love that.
And I feel like just looking at pictures generates a little bit of feelings. But I think if you look at the digital twin of a house, and to your point, 24/7, it's always open, right? And so I think you kind of walk through the home without having to be there yet. And I think that sort of can invoke nothing but feelings. How is it like to live here?
I'll tell you one quick story. One of our great partners and customers is Berkshire Hathaway Home Services.
Yeah.
And Gino Blafari, the chair and CEO, great guy, and been a mentor to me and to the company. They use Matterport, and we have some fun from time to time. And I said, hey, Gino, let's go find the most expensive listing in your entire organization. And let's find out if it's Matterport. Well, that property was a $150 million home on Long Island, belonging to none other than Billy Joel.
Yes, this is from the Berkshire Hathaway Laffey properties. I remember. Yes, go ahead.
And so you can't even go see that property as a potential buyer unless you show a bank statement that says you have 50 million in liquid assets. It's just crazy, right? And so talk about a way to, first of all, democratize access, to the home. This is 75,000 square feet of indoor-outdoor space that we Matterported. The whole thing, the building facades, the lawns, the grounds, the waterfront, amazing, and everything in the house. You could sell tickets to this property as if it was a museum and people would probably pay, right? And so you talk about feeling and emotion, right? Oh, yeah. You go to that Matterport and you look at the craftsmanship and then the stories that were told inside the home and, the sounds and the music that must have been emanating from, Billy's piano when he's working out, music over the weekends and whatnot. You cannot get that from photos. You cannot appreciate
100%.
This property and in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, the reason we do those, kind of iconic houses, and we do a lot more of them now, is it does evoke the magic of what real estate really is all about. And it brings people closer to that magic. And when they feel it, it's like, well, geez, I can do that for my condo I'm trying to sell down the street. And you will get a similar, feeling. Yes, it's not 75,000 square feet of Billy Joel, but it's everything you would want it to be, for that seller, right? And you want to maximize that experience, for the 100%. Buyer. This is the future, right?
Yeah, that's a great story. Great story. I remember seeing that property and that Matterport, by the way. I wish you could just embed Billy Joel singing a song and walking you through it.
I think that's going to be in a future release from Matterport, by the way. We get tons of requests for audio tracks and overlays. And we haven't even talked about what happens with Matterport next and this whole thing we have called property intelligence, where what are we doing with Gen AI to supercharge the digital twin? We can get into it if we have time, or, it could be another.
Why don't you give it short, like under a minute. Just let's finish up with that.
Okay. So, I mentioned to you, the whole reason I came to Matterport was come for the capture, the camera, the 3D digital twin, but stay for the data, right? And so as we look at this data, right, we have I can tell you anything about the property once I've Matterported it. Right? Even properties I've Matterported 7, 8 years ago. Now AI is caught up, and it's so good and so smart. I have measured it down to every square centimeter. Right. Wow. I know the conditions of the hardwood floors. Yeah. I know the size of the kitchen island. I know how many stools could comfortably fit around that kitchen island. I know how high the ceilings are in the vaulted living room. How wide is the hearth of the fireplace? I can go on and on. Not just is it 3.5 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms. Well, what kind of bathrooms? Does it have a clawfoot tub? Does it have dual sinks or single sinks? Wow. All these sorts of things are now inventory that we run property intelligence across on any Matterport that we've done, past, present, future. And now you can talk to it. You can actually say, tell me about this room. And it has super intelligence that can tell you more than a contractor, that would be standing in that room with you if you were physically in the property, because a contractor can't do 3 million measurements in a living room, but a Matterport can do it in 14 seconds, right? And if you can take all of that data, plus then let's say like an OpenAI or a ChatGPT, this is a large language model that already knows a lot of stuff in the real world about homes, accessibility in homes, furnishing and design of homes and things. It just has general knowledge that's quite impressive. But then you marry that with all of Matterport's precision spatial data about an exact property. Not only can it give you a guided tour of the home with an incredible insights that you can then actually have a natural language conversation with as you're moving through the house. This is the real autopilot, open house that agents, can turn on. In fact, you could even train the AI in your own voice as an agent, and it's your twin. We create a digital twin for you while you're sleeping. You're hosting 1,000 of these open houses in parallel, because literally, Billy Joel House will get 1,000 tours in a week. Yeah. And what if that could be guided, right, and informative and instructive, and you could have this dialogue? That's here today. It is so interesting and exciting as to where this goes. This one use case, can launch 1,000 ships and 1,000 agents, and 100%. It really will supercharge, what an agent can offer to a seller. Can you imagine going in and pitching that and saying, I want to win your listing, and here's how I'm going to launch this extraordinary digital campaign, like you've never seen before. And by the way, hate to keep repeating it, but everything I just told you, you can do that with a smartphone in your pocket to get started, and you could do it for free. Who wouldn't start here versus paying, who knows what it would cost to photograph? I should ask, by the way, Billy Joel House, thousands of dollars to do that. Even the most elaborate Matterports aren't thousands of dollars anymore. We have to, change our thinking here. You embrace, the digital, movement that's coming. And the exciting thing is it's whether it's Matterport or hopefully other companies that come in and join us on the crusade, it's so affordable and accessible. That's the goal, right? Everybody should have this as the new standard.
Yeah, 100%. I think you sort of democratize the digital twin component, which barrier of entry. You talked about that earlier. And then now it's like property intelligence, which will open many doors that even like inspections, all these other industries that sort of sit on top of the actual transaction.
It's huge. And
it's huge.
Here, the favorite feature of the early adopters of this from the agent community is defurnish. You can walk into that home if it's cluttered or the homeowner just couldn't get it cleaned or whatever, and you're trying to do an open house, you can hit a button now, and using our Gen AI, we digitally remove the 3D objects. And so this is all in 3D. We're not just doing magic eraser on a photo. It cleanly can just clear out the clutter. And then the next stage that's coming beginning later this year is auto designer. Now I'd love to see the thing with new modern contemporary furnishings in. Could I even choose my furniture maker could I get things from Crate and Barrel, or maybe it's an apartment I want to be more affordable. I go IKEA. Yes, you could put actual furnishings in that are dimensionally accurate, so you can tell if it's going to fit or not, and it's going to work in the property with 100% confidence. And then imagine being able to say, yeah, I'm going to add that to cart, checkout, and buy. And now I've just, got my new furnishings for my new home ready to go, even before I've closed escrow, right? It's where, this technology is unlocking and breaking down these doors. to do things in the digital realm that even physical staging of properties is one of the most frustrating, expensive, pain in the butt things that real estate agents have to deal with. Yeah. Well, imagine if you didn't, and it was just all digital, and I can give you 5 different styles of furnishings, not just one that you're stuck with from the designer for every house that has a listing, because I can digitally just swap out the styles to whatever the buyer's preferences are. Like, we're going to personalize, the home buying experience in some extraordinary ways starting now.
Yeah, and I think what's important there for me, that as I listen to you speak about those features, now the agents, even if they're savvy enough, they're doing it in different silos stuff, and it adds a lot of time. You're collapsing that functionality and elevating the experience for not just the agent, but also the consumer. So this has been so interesting and fascinating, RJ. I'm glad we were able to do this, and I appreciate you jumping on. But before we finish, I'd love for the audience, I ask all my guests this question. I don't know if you're a book or a podcast person. If you could pick one that has greatly influenced you to becoming who you are, if you had to put a flag, which one would that be?
Yeah. Well, there's many, right? I'm sure this is always one of those hard questions, that you ask folks to come on. But I'll tell you, a book that I have had in the library for a really long time, and I have found myself picking it up on multiple occasions across my career. And as I came into Matterport, and I've just been going back through it again in my mind, because it's really important for the times we're in, I believe. It's called As Little Design as Possible. It's a book by Dieter Rams. And who is Dieter Rams? He's, one of the great industrial designers, I'd say of the 20th century. If you've ever, used a Braun razor or seen the cool Braun travel clocks, or back in the 50s and 60s, he made extraordinarily cool, sleek, mid-century style hi-fi equipment, stereos, like you name it. And he was a great inspiration to the industrial designers at Apple that really paved the way for creating, products that were so powerful and useful by the removal of features and dials and accessories, to that the simplicity, the absence of options was the actual power, of the final product. And we live in such a world and society today where we are just bombarded with information, with choices, with things, because perhaps technology has made it so easy to flood us, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In our scrolling lists of Instagram inspirations and, products you can buy and things, like it's overload. And As Little Design as Possible reminds me in my everyday life, but also in places like Matterport and the things we are trying to do to move the real estate industry forward, is how can we take away these complexities that, afflict everybody in this sort of analog, still largely offline world of real estate. And if we're going to bring you into all of these new things and the chat GPTs and the Gen AI, it's overload for all the agents. Let's be honest. It's too much. And not all of it applies. Like, there isn't a chat answer for everything, and there shouldn't be. Like, what are the things that we can do that just strip all of that away and make it simple and elegant and intuitive and useful, for the world, and not lose sight of that principle. And so going back all the way to how did we think about that when we were trying to make a better, easier to use razor? Like, what were those challenges and design, principles applied? When you go to those first principles, it's like, aha, right? The world isn't so hard to solve. We can do this again.
Yeah, and that's a great suggestion. That book, we'll add a link to that book in the show notes. I made a note of it, so I'm going to get that book. Thank you for your suggestion. RJ, this has been fascinating. A little history lesson and where we're headed. We truly are in transformative times, and I appreciate you taking the time with your busy schedule to be on the podcast, and I hope to meet you in real life sometime soon.
I'm sure we will. Thanks, Rajiv. This was super fun. Enjoyed being here.
Thank you. You made it to the end. Nice. My goal with this podcast is to elevate your AI skills every week. If you found value in the show, your goal is to follow, share with a fellow agent, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave us a review, as it helps us reach more agents like you.